Hi there, and thank you for watching this episode of Successful Interviewing. My name is Michael Miller, and in this installment we're going to cover the behavioral-based interview question, which goes something along the lines of, so tell me about a mistake that you've made, and tell me what you learned from that experience. Variations could be something along the lines of, tell me about the biggest career failure you've had, and give me some examples of what you've learned from that. There are other variations, but you get the general idea. First off, it is a behavioral-based interview question, and this video is part of a series of videos. So if you haven't already watched it, I would suggest watching video number 10, which covers behavioral-based interview questions and the format that you should follow to answer those, as well as some exercises that can help you organize your thoughts. There are 3 keys to answering this particular behavioral-based interview question about mistakes you've made in the past. But before we get into that, I think it's imperative that you understand the profile. Like a lot of the advice that I give, you need to understand what the company is looking for. And if you watch episode number 2 about resumes, I do cover that, I think, pretty extensively in terms of understanding skill set as well as cultural fit, because it will play into the best way that you answer this question based on your industry and the type of job that you're going for. First thing, I think you should put a little thought into why either the recruiter or the hiring manager would be asking you what can be a difficult question, which is about your biggest failures. It could be a variety of things, and understanding that profile will help you identify those. Could simply be that we want to understand if you're the type of person that learns from your mistakes and doesn't repeat them. Could be just that we want to make sure that you are the type of person that is self-aware enough to understand when you did something wrong and can admit it. It could be just an assessment of whether or not you take smart risks or foolish risks. If you are trying to land a job in a very creative field, obviously we want somebody that's going to try new things. And there's a great quote that I think often gets attributed to Albert Einstein, which goes something along the lines of, a person who has never made a mistake never tried anything new. So if I'm hiring for a creative job, I don't want somebody that stays inside the box and doesn't try. And if you can't give me an example that you've ever made a mistake, that's kind of a sign that you don't really take any risk. Now on the other side of that coin, if I'm looking for somebody that is incredibly detail-oriented, an accounting position or a coding position where you have to be very precise, I don't necessarily want somebody that is foolish with mistakes and incredibly risky. So that's why I think it's imperative that you really understand the profile that the company is trying to hire before you understand the best way for you to answer this question. So let me run through the 3 keys. Number 1 is, don't try to avoid giving me an example of a mistake. You need to give me a reasonable failure. And by reasonable, I mean I don't want it to be too risky. I don't want it to show a concerning personality flaw. Understand the profile and understand your industry enough to know this is a reasonable, common mistake that people make, especially as they are learning their craft. The second key I would say is just to identify exactly what it was that you did wrong. Say you're in the IT industry and you did not take into consideration that there were several coders working on a project and they were using different terminology than the end user wants or uses. Or you forgot to test for the fact that there's going to be updates from another software program that this is going to interact in. Whatever it is, you need to be able to explain what it was that you did wrong that led to this failure that you're giving me an example on. Now, number 3, and it should be obvious, but I want you to take some time and work through this prior to your interview. You need to be able to explain to me not just what you learned, but what actual steps have you taken since that failure occurred to make sure that it never happens again. I used to run my project this way. Now I include these quality control steps along the way every time I work, and I never repeat that mistake in any of my work these days. So again, the 3 keys are: you need to give me a specific failure or a mistake. Number 2, you need to identify exactly what it was that you did wrong that you should have done differently. And number 3, what steps have you taken to ensure that you aren't repeating the same mistake? Everybody makes mistakes, and that's perfectly fine. Again, what I'm looking for usually in this type of question and answer is that you're not repeating the same mistake again. If I visualize you in the role that I'm hiring for, I want to know that you've learned from that and it's not going to occur again. I hope that those steps helps you identify the best way to answer the question of tell me about your biggest failure and what you've learned for it. But as I mentioned earlier, I strongly suggest that you look at video number 10 about behavioral-based interview questions, and before you sort of organize your thoughts, you might take another look at video number 2 to understand how to identify the profile that the company is looking for. I hope that that is helpful for you and that you're able to go into any interview situation confident that even with this tough question, you're going to be able to knock it out of the park. Good luck on your job search. I hope it goes well. And as always, please share these videos with your network. Thanks.